Well, hey everybody, John Ritland here with one more WrestleMania themed countdown. Every Mick Foley WrestleMania match ranked from worst to best. Now, this will be the last one for the year, as we're almost, right at WrestleMania 35. Next year, I'll have ones for like Triple H, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, a few others, Batista probably, guys that are older that probably don't have a lot of time left. For this one, for like the last few, it's ones that are clearly not going to wrestle at WrestleMania anymore, who either retired or, in the case of Owen Hart, British Bulldog, are sadly no longer with us as they were taken way too soon. With Mick Foley, he really didn't have a lot of time as a full-time guy in WWE. By the time it came around to 2000, he had to retire. Now, he did have a couple matches at a couple WrestleManias after that, including one that I'm going to talk about that I really, really praise because it was one of my favorite matches of WrestleMania ever. But taking a look at what he did, why not do a short video and talk about the lows and some of the highs of, what Mick Foley did. Now, to be fair, this is not encapsulate everything in his career. He had a hell of a career before he got to WWE, but he had some memorable moments. Some for good, some for bad. So let's get right into it with the 6 Mania matches that Mick Foley did in his, short time in WWE. Short full time and then all that stuff that I mentioned. So, number 6, Mankind versus The Big Show at Mania 15. Sweet Jesus, this was not very good. I mean, Big Show at this point had just come off of a debut that was because he threw Austin into the steel cage wall after beating him up. And then Austin, threw him in so hard that Austin, the cage wall busted open and Austin dropped out of the ring and then was able to go to WrestleMania. Good debut there, Big Show. They flip-flopped him a whole lot after this. He was supposed to be like the corporation heavy. He was supposed to keep Mick Foley out of being the special guest referee for Austin and The Rock in the main event. And there were some spots that were kind of bad. Big Show doing this one spot where he pretty much landed on Mick Foley. That sounded and looked like it really, really hurt. Now, Mankind would end up winning, and he would end up going to, be the referee later, even though he was injured. But this was the weakest match that Mick Foley had at a WrestleMania. I mean, clearly, it just was. It just wasn't very good. Then we go to number 5. And I hate putting this one here because it was Mick Foley's only time in the WrestleMania main event, but gotta talk about it. Mick Foley versus The Rock versus Triple H versus The Big Show at Mania 2000, aka Mania 16. Foley had just retired at No Way Out just about 6 weeks before, and then was suddenly brought out, out of retirement by Linda McMahon. So it was Linda in Foley's corner, Shane in Big Show's corner, Vince in The Rock's corner, and then Triple H had Stephanie McMahon in every corner. Literally nothing has changed in 19 goddamn years. How sad is that? We still have the McMahons on TV a whole bunch. Can you tell I'm bitter about the current product? Just a lot. But this match, if Foley had not retired, if Foley had done that and maybe gone away a bit, just for a few weeks to sell his injuries and then come back, cool. But they announced that he was retiring, and then this, and Foley had by all rights and accounts checked out because his body was done. Now, it was cool that he got to be in the main event and he got to be in the final 3, but even just a few weeks off, I mean, his knees were totally shot well before this. He tried to do the, elbow drop off the, off the ropes through the announcer's table. Didn't even make it close. Yeah, not very good. It was cool that he was in the main event, but this really wasn't very good. It really wasn't. We then go to number 4, Foley and The Rock and Sock Connection versus Evolution minus Triple H. So Batista, Ric Flair, and Randy Orton. This was cool because it continued the Foley-Orton storyline that actually was pretty damn nice and would lead to a blow-away match at Backlash the following month. And it did have Rock mocking Ric Flair, and it was kind of cool to see Batista in the match as well. It was what it was, but it felt like one of the weaker matches on the Mania 20 card. I mean, it was cool to see Foley and Rock team up, especially on the grand stage of WrestleMania. But, I mean, he put over Orton, with an RKO from out of nowhere. But yeah, this wasn't that great. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't that great. I mean, let's be perfectly honest about that. I mean, that's why it's here just about halfway, halfway up the list. I mean, of the short list that it is. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't great. However, I give credit, Foley dropped a lot of weight before this. I mean, he looked in the best shape of his of his life, or at least like of the last like 10 to 15 years. And that was, or at least the last 10. So that was really cool. And yeah, he put over Orton and then got to have a better match with him at Backlash a month later, as I said. But then we go to number 3, Mankind Invader versus the Bulldog or British Bulldog and Owen Hart at Mania 13. Despite the fluky finish, the match I talked about before on a couple other lists, Owen and, for Owen and the British Bulldog, because they were both involved in this match, clearly, as I just said. This was actually pretty cool because it was nice to see Mankind, Foley and Vader team up, even though they were unlikely allies and great rivals in a couple other promotions. This was cool to see, and again, even with the finish just to protect Owen and Bulldog to give them the titles, it was still what it was. Good match, and certainly no complaints. Number 2, Cactus Jack and Terry Funk versus the New Age Outlaws of Mania 14 in a dumpster match for the tag titles. Cactus Jack and Terry Funk would get the victory here, but they would use a dumpster backstage and not the dumpster at ringside, so they would lose the tag titles soon after. I mean, like the next night. Right. What? A regulation dumpster. Yeah, the Attitude Era has some really shit rules and stuff like that, and but it's so glorified as being the best time to be a wrestling fan. Don't get me wrong, the Monday Night Wars were great, but some stuff like this, when you just look a little closer at the details and don't, glorify everything, you're like, well, that was some really stupid booking. But anyway, they did win the tag titles. It was nice, and this loss didn't matter to Road Dogg, because wins and losses don't matter to that guy. Seriously, I think he pump handle slammed himself a little too much. I don't know how one would do that, but that guy clearly is off his rocker. Good match for what it was, though. Mania 14, not exactly one of the best WrestleManias, but this was pretty memorable. Good hardcore match, even though I'm not the biggest fan of hardcore matches. And having said that, let's go to number 1, Mick Foley versus Edge in a, hardcore match, Extreme Rules match, Falls Count. No, it was a hardcore match, Falls Count Anywhere, all this stuff and everything. It was really, really bloody, especially for, being in the Ruthless Aggression era when they weren't shying away from blood because they did have bloody spots and stuff like that, but they weren't doing as much of it. This stood out on a very packed Mania 22 card. It is one of my favorite Mania matches of all time. One of my favorite matches involving Edge. And I did a list on that. You guys can check that out. There'll be playlists at the end of this video with all the countdown videos I've done, and it'll be a little further down. Foley had his finest performance at WrestleMania. He had not had the best performances. Even though I talked about him doing pretty well in some of these matches, this was his crowning achievement, and the last match that he also had at WrestleMania, which, to be fair, by the time this was around, this was pretty much everything that he could do. Now, he had a feud where he teamed up with Edge for a little bit, and then feuded with Ric Flair to like SummerSlam 06, and then really didn't have a lot of matches in WWE after that. I mean, barely any, and then went to Impact for a little bit, and then came back, was in the Royal Rumble 2012 for a little bit, with the Sacco and Cobra connection, and that, oh dear, that was bad. This match, however, was very, very good. The thumbtack spots, the barbed wire bat, the barbed wire, the flaming table, and Edge looking like he really shocked himself with that spear through Foley, into Foley, through the flaming table. Lita getting, getting barbed wire in her mouth and everything. Probably not the first time she had that, but moving on. This was really, really good, and Foley putting over Edge strong while having his own great moments and pretty much doing his greatest hits in this match. That's why it's number 1. So yeah, bit of a short list, but honestly, Foley didn't have the most memorable stuff at WrestleMania, but when he did, especially later in his career, especially at this point, Mania 22, that sticks with you. I mean, and it still sticks with me. Like, I was 25 at the time Mania 22 happened. And it was very memorable, and is a match that I will always watch before any WrestleMania comes around, because it was great, and the commentary is great, and Foley sold it like crazy and put over Edge strong. And it was great stuff. So anyway, that's what I have to say. What do you have to say? What do you guys think? Who are some other superstars you would like to see me do lists on? Not right now, but maybe next year. Leave ones in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.